everyone. It's Melissa Peters here with DORN Companies, coming to you pain-free live to help you live pain and injury-free. Thank you for tuning in today for another episode of the Injury Prevention Academy, brought to you by DORN Companies, the country's leading wellness-based pain management and injury prevention company, committed to reducing cost of healthcare, workers' compensation, and lost productivity, resulting in over $100 million in savings over the last 20 years for our clients. Joining us today is Dr. Stephen Grinstead, who is the owner of Grinstead Consultation and Training Services. Dr. Grinstead has a bachelor's degree in behavioral science, a master's degree in counseling psychology, and a doctorate in addictive disorders. He is a licensed marriage and family therapist, a past California certified alcohol and drug counselor, and a current advanced relapse prevention specialist. Dr. Grinstead is an internationally recognized expert in preventing relapse related to addiction and chronic pain disorders, and is the developer of the addiction-free pain management system. He has been working with chronic pain management, substance use disorders, eating addiction, and coexisting mental and personality disorders since 1984. Thank you so much for joining me today. Stephen, how are you doing?
Hey, like I shared earlier, if I was getting much better, I'd be in big trouble and this would probably go crazy, but I'll try to restrain myself.
Well, that is excellent to hear, and thank you so much for taking time to be here with me today. So to dive right in, I know you recently published a book, Thank You, Adversity for Yet Another Test. So to start, I'd like to talk about the body, mind, spirit approach for relieving chronic pain and the importance of adopting a whole person approach and considering the biological, psychological, social, and spiritual components of individuals.
Cool. You know, I wrote my last book. This is my latest book, in part due to what I call the opioid syndemic. I don't call it an epidemic, it's a syndemic. And it has many different causes, and everybody wants to blame who's the cause, but nobody's looking at what we need to do for the solution. So when I wrote my book, I wanted to talk about the need to reevaluate the traditional biomedical model for chronic pain management, and that includes pills, shots, surgeries, procedures, and different types of interventional pain management. And a lot of people do very well with that, but there's a subset of people that have coexisting disorders I'll talk about later that don't respond to that. They need the body, mind, spirit approach I talk about in my book. And I believe it's really important that we work with, not on, the whole person. And the healing has to include all four domains, because it is a major problem in our country today.
Okay, so when we're talking about, can you just give a brief example? Biological, you mentioned, is pain meds, the kind of the traditional approach. So psychological, social, and spiritual components. What are we talking about there?
Biological is much more than just the biomedical model of pills, shots, procedures, and things. It also includes things like diet, nutrition, exercise, flexibility, mobility, getting the body operating at a healthy level, good hygiene. So all that goes into the biological area, along with the medication management, appropriate recovery-friendly medication management, as I refer to it. Now, in the psychological area, this is where people need to get in touch with their mistaken beliefs, skewed perceptions that lead to problematic thinking errors, that lead to uncomfortable emotions, that lead to people having urges or impulse to do self-defeating things. They actually do it, and that it impacts everybody else. So it impacts friends, family, and community. And then we move into the spiritual domain. And the first thing I do when I work with people is have to differentiate between religion and spirituality. And that's a real challenge for some people that have been brought up, especially in rigid, maybe problematic fundamental religions, where they felt they were being abused. So we need to help them see spirituality is more about how to practice, quote, the golden rule. Doing it to others as I would want them to do it to me, is to listen to the power of the universe, higher power, God, whatever you want to call it, and to practice these spiritual principles practices and tools. And I list all of that in the section in my book, and I actually have it on my website, drstevegrinstead.com, on the articles archive page, to where people can look at this and the spiritual component of chronic pain management. A few years ago, I was asked to present at the American Society of Addiction Medicine conference in Baltimore on the spiritual component of chronic pain management. And I had a room full of docs that were just eager for that finally. So that's the biopsychosocial spiritual.
Okay, thank you for that. And I watched one of your videos and really liked you quoted someone who I believe you worked with who mentioned that religion is preparing for, you know,
The
what
next,
comes after us being here, but spiritual is making this life, preparing for this life and making it good. I really liked that distinction. So
yeah,
hopefully I didn't butcher that quote, but
you made it, it's really clear. One of the things I do is give all my patients an assignment to come back and they tell me what they see as the difference between religion and spirituality. This one woman gave me permission to share her answer because it was so powerful. You know, religion is a bunch of people getting together to get the most out of this life or the next life to get to the next life. And spirituality is a bunch of people getting together to get the most out of this life and live in harmony. So yeah, it's a big difference.
yes. So thank you for taking us through that. So, on the whole, chronic pain is a huge issue in our society. Studies show that anywhere from 50 to 100 million adults in the US are living with chronic or severe pain annually. This costs us $635 billion. And let's be real, the issue's not going away. If anything, chronic pain prevalence will likely increase as we have an aging population, as well as other factors that are involved. So, with that in mind, DORN, we do a lot of work with companies. So, we are focused on employee well being. So, when it comes to chronic pain and the workplace, what can employers do, and why is it important for employers to take action to address pain among their workforce?
Well, let's start with why. Why should they do it? Why is it in their best interest? Well, it's obvious that when someone gets hired, they're trained, they put a lot of time, energy, and money into getting them up to peak performance. And when they start having problems, it seems like it would be much more important to do prevention and help these people so they don't have to start with a new person from square one. And it's in their best interest to have these people operating at peak efficiency, to help them being functioning as best they can. But to do that, they need to have resources available for these people, ergonomic ways to do their jobs, giving them permission to take a frequent timeout, stretch, and flexibility breaks. And this research has really proven that, after about an hour, we need to stop and give the brain a rest if we're doing a lot of mental type work. If we're doing a lot of physical type work, we've got to stop and give the body a rest. And it just makes common sense. And then we operate at a much higher level. So that's why it's really important and why big companies should invest a lot in prevention rather than crisis management or just getting rid of somebody when they have problems. And this
I couldn't agree with you more there.
it instills loyalty into the people, and they'll be much more likely to want to perform at a higher level.
Yes, we definitely have found that even programs that we offer on-site injury prevention and pain alleviation, that people report a reduction in their stress levels as well as a boost in their morale. So that speaks to me that obviously pain doesn't exist in a vacuum, and that a lot of times when we're talking about pain, we also need to talk about other aspects of what's going on in a human's life. And you have worked a lot on looking at these coexisting disorders. So, what are some of the most common coexisting disorders that you've seen that occur with chronic pain?
Okay, so let me give a little bit of background here. I've been working on this since the mid 1990s is when I first started doing research and publishing on this. And what I've seen is the typical person doesn't just have a chronic pain condition. They have a lot of them have coexisting problems. The most common with chronic pain that lasts 6 months or longer is depression, anxiety disorders. They have some unresolved trauma history that they may not even, they have repressed, not even been in touch with. I've had a lot of patients that have not been treated for their PTSD, especially a lot of military people. And then they have other mood disorders, anxiety disorders, social anxiety disorders, uh, eating disorders. They're starting to use food as a coping tool rather than fuel. And they also have medication misuse, abuse, pseudo-addiction, or even addiction. Many people that get labeled prescription drug addicted are not addicted. In our 3 years of operating our residential triple diagnosis program, very few people had what I would call a true addictive disorder. They were having problems with their medication management, true. They were often using it to try to cope with and manage the coexisting psychological disorders, especially trauma. So there's also the coexisting social and family problems. So the family and friends need to be a part of the solution. And that's another one of my articles that gets requested the most, is the role of family and friends in chronic pain management. And also we want to include employers. In the past, before, let's see, it was 2016, I stopped, but from 2000 to 2016, I did a lot of work with workers' comp patients. And my job was to do assessment evaluations and develop a treatment plan to help them get back to work status. And a lot of them were denied coverage for some of these other disorders because it says it wasn't part of the original injury. Unfortunately, it really was. It just doesn't show up for a while.
Wow, that is an excellent point and relates to the question that I want to ask next, which is how this impacts individuals' outcomes. So when you're not addressing those coexisting disorders, you have people who have pain and their employer is like, well, that's not part of it, even though you would beg to differ. How does this ultimately impact their outcomes?
Well, for a lot of people, like I say, they're self-medicating the psychological disorders rather than the chronic pain. They're self-medicating the suffering component of pain. So one of the first thing I need to do is help people differentiate between pain and suffering, because they're two different states. And I can guarantee my patients, if and only if they're willing to do the work, they never have to suffer with their pain again. Now, they obviously go, oh, I'm not going to have any pain. I says, no, I did not say that. Pain's inevitable, suffering's optional. That goes back thousands of years. That's a Zen saying that goes back thousands of years. And what these people need is a biopsychosocial spiritual intervention approach in order to address the whole person and to help them stop sabotaging their pain management plan, which they often do. A lot of them think if I just have the right meds, I'll be fine. And unfortunately, a lot of people use some of these problematic medications to push themselves to do more, and they injure themselves and they don't feel it because of the effect of the medication. So, there's a lot of variables happening here.
So you mentioned that in your past experience that you saw that employees weren't always getting the whole person approach help that they might need. So from your perspective, what can or should employers be doing to help their workers?
Well, one of the things is they should have somebody, a psych trained person that's knowledgeable about physiological chronic pain management, as well as how it impacts mental health. And that person needs to develop a collaborative treatment plan that addresses both the chronic pain, the medication problems, if any, the psychological problems, the family problems, the work problems, and the spiritual problems. So they need to have a synergistic treatment solution for the synergistic treatment problem.
Agreed. And you mentioned also the idea that a lot of times people might mismanage an opioid prescription, that, opioids themselves aren't always the problem and can be part of a medication plan. But when it comes to just the issue of why is it a problem to simply prescribe opioids to a person dealing with it, and why is it important to go beyond that traditional biomedical model?
Well, for one thing, hasn't been any real good research on the efficacy of opioids for chronic pain. There's a lot for efficacy for acute pain. As a matter of fact, for years, for at least a decade, best practice principles has been using a biopsychosocial approach and non-opioid, non-benzo pain medications in order to help people function at a higher level. And I'm not anti-medication. I think medication can be helpful and it can be harmful. It's how it's used, who it's used with, that can produce positive outcomes or sabotage treatment completely. So, it's not all or nothing here, but if they don't include the cognitive behavioral part, the suffering part of chronic pain, it's going to sabotage these people and they're going to stop doing what they're supposed to be doing and give up or go to alcohol or other drugs as pain management. Also, we see that a lot. Methamphetamine is being used for pain management, stimulants, alcohol is one of the more common drugs that are used for pain management. And unfortunately, some of them use it with their prescription medications, which can be dangerous.
Absolutely. And speaking of some maybe new on the horizon ways of dealing with pain management that goes beyond perhaps a traditional biomedical model, in preparing for this episode, I happened to stumble across an article about the use of virtual reality and how this can allow for an avenue that is a drug-free supplement to, traditional pain management. So what are your thoughts about virtual reality and pain management and how this can help people deal with chronic pain?
Well, I really appreciated you sending that link to me ahead of time because I'm real familiar with the role of virtual reality in chronic pain and PTSD and other things. And a lot of it is used with mindfulness and relaxation response exercises. Now, we do that across the board with people. We teach them dialectical behavioral therapy, relaxation response, stress reduction tools. But when we add VR, we're really like sensory deprivation. We're getting rid of all the environmental stimuli and they're totally focused on this virtual reality where they can focus on healing and being peaceful. And many people, when they come out of this virtual reality, they're just like, wow, I don't believe this. Wasn't even hurting when I was going through this. It was so awesome. And I've done that with people taking through guided imagery and relaxation response exercises, but VR adds a really crucial piece of cutting out all the external stimuli.
Understood. And that I really am looking forward to hearing more about how that develops over the years to come in this world of technology that we live in now. You mentioned the idea that people using virtual reality say they feel peaceful. And having, watched a few of your videos in preparation for today, one of the things I came across a lot was you encourage people to make peace with their pain. Can you speak to what that means?
Oh, absolutely. Most people, when they're living with chronic pain, they see pain as the enemy. It's horrible, it's awful, it's terrible, it's excruciating, it's killing me. That's suffering. And they're always at war with the pain, which means they're really at war with themselves. I went through this myself. In 1982, I was injured to the point where I was paralyzed from the waist down, and I lost my career in teaching martial arts, and I couldn't go back to construction. And as far as I'm concerned, my life was over. So, and I was really down in what I call a chronic pain trance. That's the suffering part. That's the part that really needed healing. And what my healing began when I started to call a ceasefire. I started learning from my pain. I'm hoping you're going to provide the link to the VR for people, by the way.
Yes.
And also, I sent you a couple of PDFs. One of the things that I help people make peace with their pain and learn from their pain is what I call my empowerment pain journaling tool. And it takes people through a daily protocol of asking questions about what's going on biopsychosocial spiritually in their life, and then recording this data for a week, and then the end of the week, they go back and see what their pain's trying to teach them. And they start learning that pain is their friend. Today, when I have a pain flare-up, it's my barometer that one of two things is happening. Number one, I've done something physically I shouldn't have done or I overdid. Or number two, there's something psychological, emotional, or stress-wise that I'm not coping with effectively. So I need to learn from my pain, make peace with it, and join forces with it to make us both stronger and to stop suffering.
So current times, let's be real, aren't the most peaceful. So I want to speak now about what obstacles have the current situation related to COVID-19 created for people living with chronic pain, and what advice do you have for folks out there that are looking to manage their pain properly, but might be cut off from their usual resources that they use to do that?
Oh yeah, and I'm a personal example of this. Back in March when we went into lockdown in Idaho, where I now live, one of my practices for my pain management and quality of life is swimming and water aquatic classes. And when they closed all that down, you know, I could do other things online. I could do a lot of the meditation and the yoga, all these things. A lot of this you can do online, but I never figured out how to go swimming online.
Tell me if you ever do. That would be interesting.
And the other thing, a lot of pain patients that I've been hearing from are saying they're no longer, their doctors are no longer willing to give them like epidurals because they're afraid it will affect their immune system and they'll be high at risk for COVID. So it's been impacting that. It's also been impacting things like massage therapy, physical therapy, chiropractic. That's starting to come back online in a healthy way, but it's still very challenging for people. So people need to, first of all, stop isolating, because isolation leads to what I call the chronic pain trance. And that leads to people becoming inactive. They stop being an active participant in their own healing process. And then they move into the poor me victim stance. And then they're a victim of their pain, they're a victim of the world, they're a victim of the doctors, they're a victim of COVID. And I want to empower people. And surviving isn't enough. I don't want to teach people how to survive with chronic pain. I teach people how to thrive with chronic pain. And I believe that's really crucial. And giving them some simple to learn tools how to do that. You know, on my website, on my video blog page, and on my articles page, and the archives for each of those, there's a lot of free tools for people who are either working with pain patients or pain patients who want to learn some more tools, because I believe knowledge is power. The more we learn, the better.
Yep,
Knowledge is power. But
I'm with
Cahill
you there.
Gibran said something like, a little knowledge that's active is worth much more than much knowledge that is idle. So it's not just about having the knowledge, it's about putting that knowledge into action and becoming an active participant, not a passive recipient of treatment. And that's
I
the problem with our model.
Yes. I really like that idea of being an active participant, not a passive recipient. Because I know we at DORN, we really work to empower workers when we're on site with them to be able to take action in their own pain management through both education and engagement. So I think we are with you in that philosophy and mindset. And related, a critical piece of what we do on site is provide workers with self-care techniques around mobility and conditioning, and wanting them to be engaged in their own well-being, but also knowing some ideas of how they can be engaged, what they can do when something, flares up. So what is that role of flexibility and conditioning in managing chronic pain?
For me, it's helping people develop an appropriate activity pacing plan and setting realistic goals and shooting to improve those goals as you go on. So it's not, whatever that goal is, and the goals are in all four quadrants. What are you going to do to improve your levels of functioning biologically? What are you going to do to improve your levels of functioning psychologically? How about socially? And then spiritually? So develop this plan, a multifaceted plan that helps the whole person have a better levels of functioning, which leads to an improved quality of life. That's what we want to do.
Yes, and I know I've seen the fact, and we see it in the work that we even do, that when someone starts having chronic pain, that they stop exercising, they stop taking those walks at night, they stop playing with their kid, they kind of disengage. So when someone's working to develop that activity plan, do you have just a few quick tips that might launch someone off into figuring out how to overcome some of those obstacles?
First of all, I want to work with the person to find out which personality type they are. Some people have an adrenaline-seeking personality. That's me. When I was going through my rehabilitation, I would overdo and end up flaring myself up really bad at times. So in other words, it slowed my healing down. But other people are on the other end of the spectrum. They don't want to do anything because they have what I call anticipatory pain. They suffer from an anticipatory reaction. They're afraid that if I do anything, I'm going to hurt. It's going to be horrible, awful, terrible. So no matter which end of the spectrum, I try to get people to an effective and start low and go slow. I want them to set low goals first and then achieve those. And then let's step it up a little bit. That's the big thing I see a lot of people do, is setting unrealistic goals. And I want them to be working again in all 4 quadrants. So they have to have a plan. And we use our sessions together to do a brainstorming. What worked, what didn't work, what would have been more effective, and where do you need to go from here? So that's how I work with people, but the activity pacing plan is a crucial part of chronic pain management.
Well, thank you. That was very useful. And I want to switch gears a little bit to wrap up. You mentioned earlier a little bit that you have kind of a personal connection with this work that you do on chronic pain management and helping people to not only survive, but thrive while living with these conditions. So, what drives your passion?
A number of things drives my passion. First of all, it comes from both my Marine Corps training and my training with Sensei Richard Kim. I dedicated my book to both him and Terry Gorski, who was a really powerful mentor in my life. But Sensei Kim taught me a lot of the Zen Buddhist perspective. And that's where the title came from, because he would always tell us, whenever adversity strikes, be grateful. Say thank you, adversity, for yet another test. And I mentioned that in my dedication section of the book. That's where the title of the book came from. He would always tell the same sick joke. If you're training with me and you break your ankle, be grateful it wasn't your leg. If you're training with me and break your leg, be grateful that it didn't kill you. And if it kills you, be grateful because you don't have to finish this stupid class. And
Oh, wow.
so he used humor with it. And then he told us in the calligraphy language, adversity has 2 brushstrokes. One is crisis, the other is opportunity. So for me, I want to help people turn adversity into opportunity and healing. And that the passion that drives me is because I've seen it work so well, first with me, and then with thousands of pain patients I've worked with over the years. And I've trained over 40,000 healthcare providers in this, and they help a lot of people. So that really is my part of paying it forward, because Sensei Kim helped me so much. My first physical therapist was also a Marine. He was the only one I would listen to about slowing down. They finally found somebody that talked my language. And so we need to connect people with the right support that talks their language, can meet them where they're at. That's the other thing, is I want to empower people that are working with people to meet them where they're at. When I joined Terry Gorski's team, his first thing was I had to have a mission statement. And it became real simply, my mission is to teach people how to help people. And that's what fuels me today.
Well, thank you so much, Stephen, for your time and valuable insight. We appreciate all of you out there who took time to listen or tune in and watch today, and hope you gained some useful information, and hope to see you for the next episode. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.